Hey guys, I just wanted to give you an update on where I'm at with the, I suppose, well, it's essentially going to be the GameTouch 2 update, and that's not a new app, GameTouch 2, it's just an update, but it's pretty significant, so I'm calling it that. Essentially, I'll cover off on some of the technical stuff first, and then go into like the user experience stuff after that, and then I suppose let's crack straight into the technical side. So right now, um, the network protocoling side of the house essentially works on a single port to do both the file transfers and the commands, and that works really well for the commands. It's very responsive, but when it comes to doing file transfer stuff, it's very slow and kind of cumbersome, and anyone who's done work on creating their own profiles and syncing it will know what I'm talking about. And so I wanted that to be a far better experience, and it had to be based on the way I want user experience from the client and profile creation to be in the future. And so now what will happen is it'll still use the same messaging protocol for commands and stuff, but for file transfers, it'll use that commands protocol to negotiate a file transfer on a different port. It'll open that port, use a file transfer protocol that's dedicated to that to transfer the files, and then close those ports back down. So from a user perspective, it's kind of largely transparent, but that's how it's going to work in the back end. The next thing has been certain things that I haven't been able to implement in the past, which I do have implemented now, things that people have requested. And one of those is, the ability to have it in a system tray rather than in the taskbar. And so now, if I go to sort of our system tray here and minimize, I'll just minimize the server, and we'll see now that we have our little system tray icon that we can restore. The next thing, I suppose, from a technical perspective, and I don't really get many people asking for help, but when I do, it's sometimes cumbersome to get information that I need to help them with their sort of odd network setup that they have or that they don't know they had. So now when you start the server, you get a bit more details on the connection over here. So it'll tell you the server is this PC, so people understand what the server is. And then also it'll have the addresses, which you always were given back on the current version. But it'll also tell you your default gateway, which is where your server is sending information to before it gets to the client. And if it doesn't match the same network, you'll get this whole box or this whole text become orange, and it will say like VPN question mark, just to say, hey, do you have a VPN running? And that's not to say that you won't be able to connect to your client, but if you can't, and that information's there to be like, hey, maybe this is why. And then you have your list of connected clients sort of under here. None of the interface layout is set in stone yet, and there's some placeholders getting around, like these kind of buttons up here. That's just to help me, like be able to move elements around and stuff like that. But if we go to the client now, and we connect the client, we see we get this sort of new animation style, and then over here we get our information. Again, now it will tell you your client's address, so you don't have to go looking for it in your phone or your tablet to find the Wi-Fi settings and get that, the network that's on, which is essentially the first three numbers. Now you can name the device, so in this case I've named this one Android tablet, and then it tells you which server you're connected to. So if you have multiple servers, it will tell you which one this one is actually connected to. And then if we go back to the server, you can see it'll show us this is what's actually connected, and any extra devices down here, it'll have what names they are, etc. And I suppose now, from like a user experience perspective, what I wanted, um, especially from the client side, is for everything to just be very simple. So you kind of just have your, select your profile. I don't have any on here at the moment, but we'll see that in a second. Load it, or select the load on connect. So when you connect, it'll load the profile, and that's kind of like it from a client's perspective. Which means like, well, how do I do all the editing, my buttons and things like that? And that's now all going to be done on the server. Um, and I needed to make that uh, as low effort as possible and as, I suppose, as quick as possible to do the updates and have them be reflected on your tablet. Right now, if you wanted to do, you know, update profiles on a client and stuff like that, it's very cumbersome. You would edit everything on, you download the Windows client, for example, edit all the editing, then transfer that to the server, and then transfer that stuff on the server then to your other client. Um, and it's all a bit painful. But now when you do the file transfers, it also checks for file version, not just the file name. And I say, like, it'll check if the file that you're transferring to the server is actually an updated version of what's on the client and override it. So let's say you make an adjustment to an image, it will do that file like identification comparison and transfer it if you've just made some updates to an image or something like that, or just some updates to a profile. And then from the sort of client UI perspective, you can see this is the sort of cleaner looking UI I'm going for. And there's no, opening, closing the metal door things anymore. It's all just, I want it to be quick and the user can get to what they want to do quickly and not have to wait for animations and things like that. And now, I suppose from a, how do we go about now doing the profile creation? So how do we modify buttons that we have that we just want to make changes to? And I'll go through that now. From the, the users that just want to load the profile that comes with the tablet and play the space sim or whatever, that will all still be there, and largely for them this will be completely unchanged. But if they want to edit that and change a few things, well, then this is what that will kind of look like. And so now on the server we have this editor, and this editor has this bit in the middle here, which is for where you're going to be editing your profile. So this will be representation of the tablet. And then if we go over here, we can select profile, go create new. If we had other profiles there, they'd be listed here. It's going to call this test profile. And then we can set a resolution. So every device has its own specific resolution. Everything will scale if you send it to another person or use a different screen, but sometimes the scaling is not exact, or not quite how you want it to look. So this lets you set a specific resolution and then create that. And so this is exactly how it's going to look like on your device. Also, for creating vertical profiles, you can just swap the horizontal and vertical ratios around, and then you'll be able to create, like a vertical profile, and it should look correct when you load it up on your tablet. So now we have our profile. I'll use the same sort of vernacular or vocabulary for what I call each of the extra panels, right? Which is panels. So this is just this is one screen that you might see on your client, but now you can also add command buttons and everything to the main screen. So it's not just like the main panel is your navigation panel. The main panel is like any other panel that you can navigate from or you can do commands from. And so if we go to our panels, see here that we've just got main, that's all we have, and up the top it tells us that we're editing this profile and we're editing this panel of this profile. And we can change our background image. Let's put that there. Change our background color. Let's give it an overlay around the edge here. Change our overlay color. Let's make it like that. All right, now we have this. This is our sort of main panel. It's going to look like. Now we can add a completely new panel. Flight panel. Add that. Again, we get like another blank template. We can change the background. I'll change the overlay because this one has an overlay built into it. So I'm just gonna let's go that. Do some colors. Okay, and so now we can clearly see as we switch between the panels that they're different. But let's say this is, this is what we want our main panel to look like. We can just hit sort of duplicate, and it's just going to create another one, tack one. Anyway, so we'll edit. I'm going to delete main one for now. It'll prompt you, say, do you want to delete this panel? Yep. All right, cool. So now we're back to just having our main and our light panel. So now we want to add buttons to this. So I'm going to go widgets, and then the types of buttons we have. We'll just go through buttons and image label. I'm going to add a button. Okay, and we're going to make this our button to go to the flight panel. So the first thing we have in button options, these are the list of options you have. Button style, button color, pretty standard, had that before. Good. Now we have borders, and these borders are kind of like a vector, so they don't scale, they don't lose their quality when you scale them. So you can make the image as big as you want, and this border is still going to be tiny and thin. Right. We can select the border color, and we also have border size, which is the curvature of the border. We can make it a bit round or whatever if we want to do that. If you want to make a round button, you just kind of adjust that along with the size of the button. and we can have just like these round buttons, and it will crop whatever imagery you have in here, so it sticks inside the button. And we can also change the thickness of the border itself. We'll just leave it like that for now. And image up and down, we don't have to have specific file names anymore. I still have some from, you know, when I created them before, but we can just pick whatever images we want and select them as the up and down. Next thing we have is features. Toggle, yes, no. Repeat, none, while held, and loop. Transition, so which panel we're going to go to. In this case, it's main panel, the flight panel. And then the transition type, so now it's not just a fading transition, we can pick all these different types. So I'll select Rise In for this one. And then next options, go to our label. Type, so flight panel. We have our vertical alignment, I'll put him at the bottom. Horizontal alignment, just leave it in the middle. We have our label scale, but now you can like scale it absurdly large and absurdly small. And outline color, I'm just going to make this black. So now we're going to outline around the font. That's kind of hard to see, but if I make the font bigger, and you can see that we can have this sort of outline around it now. And then of course font. So make it a bit smaller. Alright, cool. Alright, and then the next thing we have, so that's our label. We have our icon. Select our icon image. I don't know. There we go. Let's go to flight. And now we can move it very discreetly around the button, exactly where we want it to be, not just in the center. And change the size. Cool. We can change the color. Let's make it like that. Right. Let's quickly go back and change our label color as well. Alright, good. So then we have, that's our icon. Now we have size and position panel. This will options panel over here. This will show you now in real time as you move it around what the X and Y position is. That way, if you want to be very specific, say I wanted it directly in the middle, I can just go down to here, 0.5 or halfway, directly in the center. It's cool. If I want it to be a little bit offset, I can do that. Move around, same for size. I just want it to be exactly that size, Now I have that button. Next thing you do is you can lock the X and Y axis, right? So I can lock the X so it only goes up and down, or lock Y so it only goes sort of left and right. And the reason that's good is, so I'm just going to add another random button here. Just leave it as default. Let's say I want to make a list of buttons. I can lock our X so I can only move it up and down. Then I can just hit duplicate. I can go through and make like a whole list of buttons, and that duplicate copies everything, the commands, etc. And then the last one is the commands. So some of the issues we had in the past, like people put the wrong command in, so like instead of Alt left or something like that, they might have Alt left with 2 T's or something, and then cause issues wouldn't work properly. But if I try and add this now when it's incorrect, I'll get this invalid command, and I can do show valid commands, and it will show me all the things that I can put in there. Still have like the up, down, and press. So we're just going to make like an Alt N button. That is 50 milliseconds. So now we add a command and we get it added down into like our list down here. You add it to button down or button up. I'm going to add delay. I'm going to press N. Then I want another delay, and then I want to sort of up, Alt left. All right, that'll be like Alt N. And then let's say I didn't want this delay in here. Typically, I'd have to delete the whole command and sort of restart. But if I just want to remove this delay, every command now has a little X icon to it that you can now just remove it, and this becomes a new command. If I go to the button up list, same thing. I don't know. Let's make it press J. And you can now add as many commands as you want. They don't go off the bottom of the screen or anything. So if I just spam this press J, now I can just get a big list of all the commands that I have that I can put onto a single button. Right, so now our flight panel will have these commands and also transition to the flight panel screen. Now if I want this to be the same, kind of like on every screen, this button has to go exactly here on every single screen. I'll just uncheck that. Well, then I can save the preset. Flight panel button. Right. Save preset. Now if I just go to like another panel, in fact, let's just duplicate the main panel. Now this is main panel 1. And if I go back to widgets, I'm going to select the preset, add it, and now I have another, it's exactly on top of the exact same place, but I'm just going to move down to here for now. And we'll see that all of everything's been duplicated, including the position. Right. And that's how you would set up your main panel, as how you want all of them to look, and then just duplicate as many panels as you want to look like that, and you'll have that to start with. So now if I go back to the flight panel, we got no buttons on here. Let's go to widgets. Do that. Just remove that. I want just a standard button, and I'm not going to go through all of the styles again, but I'm just going to make it main and go to features, set it to go to the main panel. Yeah, I'll pick a different transition type. Let's go, I don't know, rise in. And so that's button. Now we have a button on our flight panel to get back to main, and a button on our main to go to flight panel. And so the next thing is image labels, which is either an image or a label. And there's a few extra options here, so you can pick your source image. Obviously you got the border as well, just like the buttons. You can make them round and things, and so on and so forth. And also, the thickness of the border, same sort of deal. Border color, image color, if you wanted to sort of have a hue to it. Now we also have keep ratio and allow stretch. So right now, as you can see now, moving things around is a lot easier because you can just drag and resize from inside the editor here. There's no need to do it on sliders. But the image will sort of stretch inside the bounds of the border. But if I wanted to keep the image, I didn't want to squish it like that, I can do keep ratio, and it will maintain the actual aspect ratio of the image regardless of sort of how much I move the border around. I can take away allow stretch, and so now this image will be the size that it is. I can still move it around, but it is what it is. It'll still be cropped though by the border of the image. If that makes sense. Now let's say I have this button here, and I want to do some other sort of custom imagery that's not part of a button, but I want it to sort of be on top of it. In this case, we'll just say like we want to have another border around it. So what we can do is we'll just take the image out, blank. Let's take the text out too. Label style. Let's get rid of that. Just make this border a bit bigger so it's easy to see. Alright, so now we have this, I don't know, it could be anything, but this says we just got a border. We put that around something, now when we click the button behind it, it will move both like they're a pair. And so that's essentially how you would add, like images. If you just wanted it to be text, well then you change take the border away and then add the text to it. This is our flight panel. Alright, just make it bigger. So let's give it some font type. And that's our little label there. Alright, so that's all well and good. We've got a main panel now, and we've got our flight panel. Go to panels, go back to our main. But what is this? You got all this stuff on the edges, like dragging and things. What's it going to look like on the actual tablet, since it doesn't have these grid lines for alignment or anything like that? So there's a test profile button. You can push that, and then it's going to show you and operate as if it was running on your client, so you can see exactly how that's going to work and look and then this is a placeholder button, edit back to the editor. And again, that's all well and good, but then how do we get this to the client so that we can use it on the client? So we've got them both connected. We'll go back here, and what I'm going to do for the purpose of demonstrating how quick this would be if you had nothing at all on your client side, I'm literally going to delete every single file from the client right now. There's none. And then I'm just going to hit sync. So this is 110 files. It's quite a bit of imagery and stuff like that. And now it's done. And now if I go to the client, I go into my profiles, I can now see test profile is here. Press that, hit load, and then this is our profile running. And that's all well and good, but like what if I want to just, change some of the layout here and make it be reflected on the client? Well, that needs to be simple, it needs to be quick, right? So if I'm back in my editor and I'm on my main panel, and let's say just I'll move these buttons around or whatever, go back here, hit sync, and then it's reflected on the client. And so that's how simple it should be to, make your adjustments. And that's kind of the principle I'm going for, is to make it, just quick Alt Tab, change editor command, hit sync, it's done immediately, and your client's updated, and you can keep going without much fuss. Thanks for watching. Give me some feedback in Discord. Let me know what you think, and I'll try and add other stuff if it's not already, or if I haven't planned to put it in.